The $4.90 Iraqi dinar discussion is back again, and this time it is getting attention for a very specific reason. For years, the Iraqi dinar community has watched different numbers circulate online, from modest exchange rate adjustments to dramatic revaluation claims involving several dollars per dinar. Now the $4.90 figure is once again appearing in conversations, and many holders are asking the same question. Why is this number coming back, and does it actually mean anything for the Iraqi dinar in 2026? Before we go any further, there is one important distinction we need to make. The $4.90 figure is not a confirmed current Iraqi dinar exchange rate. It should be treated as a discussion point or speculative scenario, not as an official announcement from the Central Bank of Iraq. As of August 11, 2026, publicly reported market data shows Iraq operating at a dramatically different exchange rate level. The official rate is around 1,320 dinars per US dollar, while the parallel market is much weaker than that official rate. So why are people talking about $4.90 again? That is where things become interesting. When a number like $4.90 starts circulating, people naturally begin connecting it with previous discussions about monetary reform, currency redenomination, exchange rate adjustments, reserves, banking reforms, and Iraq's broader economic transformation. But there is a major difference between saying, a $4.90 rate has been discussed, and saying, Iraq has officially announced a $4.90 rate. Those are two completely different statements. And if you are holding Iraqi dinars, understanding that difference may be more important than the number itself. The reason the $4.90 discussion continues to return is because the Iraqi dinar has been surrounded by a long-running debate about what Iraq's future monetary system could look like. Iraq is not simply dealing with a currency in isolation. The country is dealing with oil revenues, government spending, foreign currency demand, banking sector modernization, digital payments, international banking relationships, and efforts to bring more financial activity into the formal banking system. All of these pieces matter. And this is exactly why a dramatic number like $4.90 can capture attention. But attention is not confirmation. One of the biggest mistakes currency watchers can make is assuming that because a number appears repeatedly, it must be coming from an official source. That is not how foreign exchange works. An exchange rate has to be supported by actual monetary policy, market mechanisms, official communication, or an observable change in the way the currency is priced. Right now, the available market data does not show the Iraqi dinar trading anywhere close to $4.90 per dinar. In fact, current market data puts the dollar around 1,310 Iraqi dinars in international mid-market references, while Iraq's domestic parallel market has recently been around 152,000 to 153,000 dinars per $100. So the real story is not that the dinar has suddenly become $4.90. The real story is why people are discussing such a number again. And there are several possible reasons. First, the Iraqi currency conversation is extremely sensitive to any suggestion of monetary reform. Whenever Iraq announces or implements changes involving banks, currency management, foreign exchange procedures, digital payments, or financial sector modernization, currency holders immediately begin asking whether those changes could eventually affect the dinar's value. That doesn't mean every banking reform leads to a revaluation. It doesn't, but it does mean that banking reforms are worth watching because a modern financial system requires a currency framework capable of supporting it. Second, Iraq's exchange rate situation itself has been attracting attention. Recent reporting shows that the parallel market rate has remained significantly weaker than the official rate. On August 11, 2026, for example, reported Baghdad market rates were around 153,250 dinars per $100 on the selling side, while the official central bank rate was reported at 1,320 dinars per dollar. That gap is important. It tells us that there are still structural pressures inside Iraq's foreign exchange market. And whenever there is a gap between official and parallel pricing, people naturally start wondering about the possibility of future monetary adjustments. But again, that does not automatically mean a massive revaluation is coming. In fact, the central bank has previously pushed back against claims that it was preparing an immediate exchange rate change. Recent reporting has noted that the official rate has remained around 1,320 dinars per dollar since 2023. So if someone tells you that $4.90 is already confirmed, the evidence currently available does not support that statement. But if someone says the $4.90 figure is part of the broader discussion surrounding possible future scenarios for the dinar, that is a different claim. And that distinction is critical. Now let's talk about what $4.90 would actually mean. If one Iraqi dinar were suddenly worth $4.90, the mathematical implications would be enormous. A 25,000 dinar note would theoretically represent $122,500. A 50,000 dinar amount would represent $245,000. Those numbers immediately show why such a scenario would require extraordinary monetary circumstances. It would not be a small adjustment. It would represent a transformation of the currency's valuation on an enormous scale. That is why serious analysis has to go beyond simply asking, could the number be $4.90? The better question is, what economic and monetary conditions would have to exist for a value like that to become sustainable? And that is where the conversation becomes much more realistic. For a currency to sustain an extremely high external value, you would expect major changes in monetary policy, monetary supply, fiscal conditions, foreign exchange management, international convertibility, and market confidence. You would also need to understand whether the scenario involves a simple appreciation, a redenomination, a new currency unit, or some other structural change. These concepts are often mixed together online. A redenomination, for example, is not the same thing as making every existing dinar worth several dollars. A redenomination can remove zeros from the currency while changing the numerical unit used in everyday transactions. That is very different from a sudden increase in the purchasing power of every existing banknote. This is one of the reasons the $4.90 discussion needs to be handled carefully. The number alone tells us almost nothing. The mechanism behind the number tells us everything. Another reason the discussion is returning is Iraq's current economic pressure. Recent reporting has highlighted serious fiscal challenges, including the enormous monthly amount required to fund government salaries and basic obligations. That creates a complicated situation. On one side, Iraq has significant natural resource wealth and enormous oil-related revenues. On the other side, the government has substantial spending obligations and remains heavily dependent on oil. This creates both opportunity and risk. If Iraq can successfully diversify its economy, strengthen its banking system, improve revenue collection, reduce informal financial activity, and modernize payment infrastructure, confidence in the financial system could improve. But if fiscal pressure increases, the currency can face additional stress. That is why a $4.90 scenario cannot be analyzed by looking at one headline. You have to look at the entire economic system. Now here's something else currency holders should pay attention to. Instead of watching social media for a new number every morning, watch official monetary signals. Watch the central bank. Watch official exchange rate publications. Watch banking regulations. Watch foreign exchange policy. Watch international banking relationships. Watch changes in currency auctions and payment systems. Watch Iraq's reserves and fiscal position. And watch whether the gap between official and parallel exchange rates is narrowing or widening. Those indicators are much more meaningful than a screenshot claiming that a certain bank has supposedly confirmed a new rate. And this brings us back to $4.90. Why does this particular number keep getting attention? Because it represents the dream scenario for many dinar holders. It is large enough to completely transform the financial value of their holdings. And that emotional appeal makes the number extremely powerful online. But emotional appeal should never be confused with monetary evidence. A viral post can receive millions of views without changing the official exchange rate by even 1 dinar. A YouTube video can say, "It's happening tonight." A social media account can claim that banks are preparing. Someone can post a screenshot of an alleged rate. None of those things constitute an official exchange rate announcement. And that is especially important in 2026, because information moves faster than verification. One person posts a rumor. Another account repeats it. A third account turns it into a headline. A fourth account says it has been confirmed. And suddenly a rumor appears to have become a fact. That is the information cycle currency holders need to be careful about. So, is the $4.90 discussion completely meaningless? Not necessarily. It can be useful if we treat it as a scenario and ask what would need to happen for such a valuation to become realistic. But it becomes dangerous when people treat the number as a guaranteed future exchange rate. There is a huge difference. A responsible currency analysis should therefore say, here is the current rate, here is the official policy, here are the economic developments, here is the rumor, and here is what would need to change for the rumor to become reality. That is the framework we should use. Now let's look at another important point. The Iraqi dinar's current market behavior tells us that the immediate story is not a dramatic revaluation. Current data shows a currency still operating within a managed monetary framework, with a substantial difference between official and parallel market pricing. That means the more realistic near-term question is whether Iraq can improve the functioning of its foreign exchange market. Can the gap between official and parallel rates be reduced? Can more foreign exchange transactions move into the formal banking system? Can confidence in Iraqi banks improve? Can international banking connections become more efficient? Can digital payments reduce dependence on physical cash? Can the government manage fiscal pressure without destabilizing monetary conditions? Those questions are far more important than whether a social media post says, $4.90. And if the answers to those questions improve over time, then the long-term currency story could become more interesting. But that is a process. It is not a magic switch. It is also worth remembering that Iraq's currency has experienced periods of significant volatility. Recent reporting showed the dinar weakening sharply in the parallel market during July, with one report describing the currency reaching around 160,000 dinars per $100 before later movements. That tells us something important. The dinar's market value can move significantly even without a formal change to the official exchange rate. So when someone claims that every market movement is evidence of an imminent revaluation, be careful. Market volatility is not the same thing as a monetary reset. Now imagine a future where Iraq successfully strengthens its financial system. Imagine a banking sector that is more integrated with international institutions. Imagine a foreign exchange market with less distortion. Imagine stronger confidence in Iraqi financial institutions. Imagine improved digital payment infrastructure. Imagine fiscal reforms that reduce pressure on government finances. Those changes could create a much stronger economic foundation. But even then, the exact future value of the dinar would depend on monetary policy and market conditions. There is no responsible way today to guarantee a specific future rate such as $4.90. And that is the message I want every IQD holder watching this video to understand. Do not let excitement force you into financial decisions. Do not pay someone for access to a secret exchange rate. Do not send money to anyone promising a guaranteed revaluation. Do not believe that you need to exchange your dinars immediately because someone online claims the rate is changing tonight. Verify everything through legitimate financial institutions and official sources. Now, there is another interesting angle to the $4.90 discussion. Numbers like $3, $4, $4.90, $6, or even higher values often appear in speculative currency communities because they are easy to remember. They create a simple headline. But real monetary policy is complicated. Central banks don't set currency values simply because a number sounds attractive. They have to consider inflation, reserves, money supply, imports, exports, government spending, financial stability, and confidence. That is why the path from a current exchange rate to an entirely different valuation would require major evidence. And right now, the evidence we have does not show a $4.90 official rate. What we do have is an Iraqi economy going through important financial and fiscal challenges, a significant official versus parallel market gap, and ongoing attention toward banking and monetary reforms. That is the real story. So when you hear, $4.90 IQD is back, don't immediately ask, when can I cash out? Ask, who announced it? Where is the official document? What exchange mechanism supports it? Is it the official rate or a hypothetical scenario? Does the central bank confirm it? Are banks actually displaying it? And most importantly, does independent market data show it? Those questions protect you from misinformation. At the same time, they allow you to remain informed about genuine developments. Because something important can happen in Iraq's financial system without the internet predicting it weeks in advance. Real monetary changes eventually leave evidence. Banks have to implement them. Accounting systems have to reflect them. Exchange rate publications have to change. Financial institutions have to respond. Businesses have to adjust. Markets have to react. That is what a real currency event looks like. So yes, the $4.90 discussion is back. Yes, people are talking about it again. Yes, it is generating excitement among Iraqi dinar holders. But as of August 11, 2026, there is no verified evidence in the sources reviewed here that the Iraqi dinar has officially revalued to $4.90 per dinar. Current reported rates remain dramatically different. That doesn't tell us what the future will be. It simply tells us what the evidence supports today. And perhaps that is the most important takeaway. Don't confuse a possibility with a prediction. Don't confuse a prediction with an announcement. And never confuse an announcement with a completed exchange rate change until banks and official data actually reflect it. The Iraqi dinar story is still developing. The financial reforms are worth watching. The official versus parallel market gap is worth watching. Iraq's fiscal position is worth watching. Banking modernization is worth watching. And if the $4.90 discussion continues to grow, the most important thing will be finding out whether it remains an online rumor or whether credible official evidence ever emerges behind it. For now, the number is a discussion, not a confirmed rate. So if you're holding IQD, stay alert, stay informed, and most importantly, verify before you act. Because in the currency world, the biggest headline isn't always the biggest signal. Sometimes the real signal is hidden in the boring details: an official document, a policy change, a banking regulation, a new exchange rate table, or a measurable shift in the market. And those are the signals worth watching. If you found this analysis useful, make sure you stay connected because the Iraqi dinar story can change quickly, and whenever a major verified development appears, the details matter far more than the rumors. The $4.90 discussion may be back, but the real question is not whether people are talking about $4.90. The real question is whether the evidence will ever catch up with the headline. Note: this script deliberately avoids presenting $4.90 as a confirmed RV rate.